Okay. Thanks, everybody that's listening, and I'm super happy for our guest today for Show Bites today, and coming from New York, we're having Ralph Anthony, who's gonna tell us
Hey.
all about his new comedy album that he just released last month. So, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Oh my God. Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm very privileged to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. Any way we can help artists promote their work and get the word out and get more eyes on it.
Yeah,
So,
that's all I've been doing for the last month is trying to do as many podcasts, shows, anything, you name it. Putting posts up, social media, trying to promote the album any way I can. Yeah, that's it. You put all this work into it, it was 2 years, almost 2.5 years in the making. So um it's kind of awesome to like have something out there that really just capsulates such a long period of time.
yeah, it's before I ask you too many questions about the album, like how long have you actually been doing comedy, or what was like your reason you even got into it?
So I started stand up. First time I got on stage was like the summer in August of 2011. It was the first time I ever got on stage. I did one show and I fell in love with doing stand up. It was absolutely amazing. I'd gotten into it because I'd blacked out. I used to be a big booze bag. I used to drink oh my God. I used to drink a disturbing amount of alcohol. And I blacked out for a whole weekend. And one of the nights, it was like Saturday night, we were at an after hour spot and I just got bored and just started like ripping on my friends and telling jokes and stories for probably like I don't know like 10 minutes or so. And the next day when I showed up for lunch, somebody was my friend Laura was like, "You were really funny last night." And that was like never the way to start a conversation with me back then, because it could have gone either way. Like really funny could be like you were such a piece of shit in the best way possible, or you really just were funny and hilarious and we loved having you around. Like it was like it's quite the gamble. So so after that weekend, she had planted the seed that she was like, you were really funny and you should do stand-up. Have you ever thought about doing it before? And so she just planted that seed. And so once I stopped drinking, uh I took like it's like 6 weeks, just about like the rest of July and through probably halfway through August, and just like hung out and I just wrote and I grew up and I always liked George Carlin. And so his quote was find what drives you nuts and then make it funny. So at the time I was at this point where I had this day job in sales, so I was working all over. And I just started to get really annoyed with the white people that I had to deal with on like a daily basis, whether they were in an office or they were on the street or the sidewalk. And so I just started writing these little ideas, just like these little observations of the shit that I was seeing. And then I just piece by piece just put it together. Like it was like a puzzle. I was like, how can I make this, like whatever, a set? At that point, I was like, I don't even know what a fucking set is, but let's start putting all these pieces of the puzzle together. And I did it, and I did this show, and it was amazing. It was amazing. The guy gave me 4 minutes, and it was the longest and fastest 4 minutes of my life. But it was the first time I'd been on stage, and it was the first time that I ever had done something literally for the first time. I was like, oh no, this is what I should be doing for the rest of my life. Like I fell in love with stand up instantly. And it was being on that stage. It to this day, even now, where you eat, no matter the show, no matter what's going on, it's such a privilege to be able to make people laugh. Like, it's so humbling. Um, it's just so humbling. And so that's how I got started. That's how I fell in love with it. And where I was in upstate New York. So comedy, like, there was like a scene, but not a scene at the same time. Like, there was like one mic a week, and and it was just like whatever. And so I knew where I wanted to go. I knew what I wanted to do, and I couldn't figure out how to get there. So I moved to New York 6 months later. I was like, this is it. I gotta get the fuck out of here. Moved to New York, and then it's like I'm from New York. Like, I'm not from the city, but I spent a bunch of time here as a kid, and I moved here. I spent all the money I had just to move to get to the city, and was working a full-time job with a lot more responsibilities. And then I was living alone because I didn't know anybody, So I was like, oh, I'll just get my own apartment. That was like such a horrible mistake. I never was on like the roommate train. So I've always lived alone. And so I had so many more like financial obligations on top of like a car payment, car insurance, all this other stuff. So comedy really, I moved here to do stand up, and stand up was the first thing to take a back seat. So for the next like 2 years, I was barely doing any stand up. And then come 2014, I turned 33, and I was like, I can't fucking take this. Like, I would be on for like up until that point, like let's say I'd be on for a month, off for two, on for two, off for three, like whatever it was. There was no consistency. And so January 2015, I was like, that's fucking it. I'm done doing this. I'm going all in. And that's what I did. I made it happen. And so I've been doing stand up for 8 years consistently. And so that's my all. I think you're all in date when you make that decision. That's the day that you become a comedian.
So since you
So
mentioned the line from Carlin, was he like a big influence in your comedy, or do you have like any comedian that like you see in your material that you kind of?
yeah, I think Carlin was such a huge influence. It was the first comic. He was the first comedy special that I ever saw. Um, and the first the first bit the first bit I ever remembered was guys named Todd. And it's one of the funniest I think it's so ridiculous, but it's just so funny because he talks about where all the tough guys went, and he makes fun of guys' names because they're so fucking goofy. Like Todd and Tyler and Tucker and I mean, like, even when you turn on the TV now, I think the goofiest fucking news anchor that's out there is Tucker Carlson. I mean, he looks like he's constipated all the time. So it like that, I don't know. That's the thinking that I kind of align with. Like, I love that observational aspect of his material because it was very raw and it was very direct. Like, there was no gray area. You knew exactly what he meant when he was telling those jokes. But I also I love a good story. So like, I love Eddie Murphy. I love Dane Cook. I love Kevin Hart, Chappelle. The list could go on and on and on. Sebastian. I love Patrice. Greg Giraldo is another one. Chris Rock is up there too. If I had to give you like my top three, I'd say Carlin, Rock, and then I love top five. It would be all right. It's a top five. It's such a hard question.
I know.
Oh my god, asking a comic who like their top five, top three, top 10. It's always so hard because there's so many comics that we like. But I'd say Carlin, Pryor, Rock, Cook, and was it Carlin, Pryor, Rock, Cook, and
Chappelle.
Yeah, Chappelle. I like. Yeah, I like Chappelle. That would probably, yeah, that would be my top five, I'd have to say. And then you have like Patrice, Sebastian, Burr, um, Mitch Hedberg, Geraldo. Oh my God. Like I could literally just keep going and going. Joan Rivers. You talk about a fucking beast. You listen to Joan Rivers, and she is like just such a fucking animal. Like she's so good, or was so good, I should say. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah. Already with the brain squeezers.
All right, so you said 2015 is when you took it really serious and you were like, okay, I'm going for it. Was that still when you were in New York, or was it somewhere else?
No, at that point, I was in New York. I was living in Brooklyn, and so at that point, like I kind of knew I was kind of feeling out where I like to go with stand up. I was starting to tell some stories. I still love doing all my observational stuff. Um, and um, and so January 2015, I took a class, and I took a class at a comedy club because I was like, well, if you're gonna, if you're gonna do this, you got to have some skin in the game. So I was like, let's see what clubs offer classes. And so I found this class, and I I had the instructor told me something. He said something so outlandish, and I'm glad. It's like, you ever have those moments where it feels like a negative, but it's almost like a positive. That was my experience with this class. Because the guy told me straight up to my face, he goes, "Nobody's going to want to listen to a story from you. They don't want to listen to your stories." And I was like, "You have no idea who the fuck I am, buddy. Like, I got tons of stories. I'm just learning. I'm just trying to learn how to refine my joke writing. Like that's why I'm here." Um, and uh, and so he taught me, but the way that he was teaching how to write jokes, he taught me everything I did not want to do. And when I just trusted my gut and took a little bit of here and there of things that I was seeing and things I was listening to, it turned out to be all successful. And I ended up getting passed at that club a year later, uh, by the owner. I did late night. It was a comic strip, and and again, going with that whole idea of Carlin and writing about what drives you nuts and making it funny. I had this job in sales, and so I would sit in these sales meetings, and I would be so annoyed and frustrated because they would treat, like, I sold office supplies, and they would treat it like you're trading stocks and bonds. And you're like, this is fucking pens and paper. Like, can you just calm down? Like, it's not that serious. Okay. It's just not. And they were making all these references to like animals. So it's like, grab the bull by the horns, beating a dead horse, address the elephant in the room, get the monkey off your back, get your ducks in a row, all these things. And so I started writing down all these phrases that I would hear in these meetings about animals. And so the joke that I wrote that got me passed in the club, and it's one of my favorite jokes to do for any one of my, like, when I book like a corporate gig, it's one of my favorite jokes to do. It's all about corporate America's weird obsession with animals. And so I did a joke for grab the bull by the horns, address the elephant in the room, get your ducks in a row, and get the monkey off your back. And so I did a joke for each one of those four things. And then I did one final joke that tied all four things together. And that's what got me passed at the club. And I've never looked back.
So was that teacher that told you before you're not gonna make it? Was he at the club when you got?
I don't think so. I don't think so, but it didn't bother me. It still doesn't. Um, those things, things happen for you,
Yeah.
whether you believe it or not. No matter what goes on in your life, things will always happen things don't happen to you. That's a victim mentality. They happen for you. And so when I took his class, and I got that unsolicited advice, it's just like, well, fuck me, man. Really? All right. Because like my mom was a teacher. And I feel like as a teacher, as an instructor, you should take your students' abilities and kind of mold that into the best way for them if that's what they excel at. Like I don't write premise, setup, punchline. Like I have an idea for a story, I'll tell my story, and then I'll have the premise is the story. And then the setup are all the little things that go on in the story. And then the punches are all the little things that I just add into it. So it's like, it's still the same setup. It's still the same configuration. It's just put together differently, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
So you said it took you almost like the last 2 years, like you worked towards the album. So is that like everything you like performed over the last 2 years, it kind of made it into the album, or is it like older stuff you took in there too?
no, all the stuff that's on the album was stuff I wrote during COVID. So the first joke, it's so funny how this actually worked out. The first joke on the album is the first joke I ever wrote during COVID. And then the last joke is the last joke I wrote before I went out on tour to get to start doing headlining spots. So I wrote this one joke. My ending joke was in March of last year, 2022. So a year ago, this joke was like an infant. It was like a baby. It was like a baby joke. And then I just kept working it and working it. But because I was so into doing Zoom, I wrote probably, oh my God, 3 hours worth of material. Like I have notebooks and my laptop up in the cloud, my phone. There's more. I have more jokes right now than I know what to do with. And that's not like a humble brag by any means. It's more like it was almost like an obsession at that point because it's lockdown. There was nothing we could do. I was on Obamacare, so I was afraid to get sick because then I'd have to go to urgent care and I didn't know if I was going to come out alive or not.
Yeah.
So, and so I just wrote and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And like at one point, this whole side wall over here was just filled with like these giant post-its. And those would be like I'd write the idea for the joke, like the name of the joke, and then I would just write all these tags and punches and setups and everything. Everything that would go into a joke would go on the post-it. And for like a week, I would just like riff the joke on these Zoom shows or Zoom mics. And so I just had so much material. And when it came time for the album, I just said, these are the jokes that I like the most. These are the most fun jokes. And I wanted to tell a story of like where I was to where I came from, and to where I was to where I am to why I am the way that I am, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I liked having a theme to it.
Yeah, I listened to the album, and there's like a lot of like self-deprecating, like, oh yeah, I look like this, and like you drugs and reference to the drinking. So people really like get to know you, like
Yeah,
stories about yourself. And
yeah, and that's the cool part because during COVID, my life changed so drastically. Like going into the pandemic, I had no idea how much my life would change, even just in like 6 months, to like going from not knowing what was going on in the world, to like addressing my childhood trauma stuff, then the to meeting someone that changed my life. She was the love of my life, and she had a kid, and that kid became my kid. And so, being in that relationship showed me how much I wanted to be a husband, how much I wanted to be a father. And literally, I met her daughter on we were doing it on FaceTime. We would do like FaceTime dates because it was COVID. And so I met her daughter, let's say like November of 2020, I think. And if you asked me like in November of 2019, like literally a year before, like I was still going out, blacking out, getting fucked up, partying like an animal, just dating randomly. Um, it was like my life had just changed for the better. It became more rich and fulfilling. And so that's what I wanted this album to really just express, where it's like, if you looked at me, you would have no idea that I am like this, you know, giant vulnerable teddy bear. Like I fucking cry, I journal, I meditate twice a day. Like nobody would have any idea. And so I was like, let's go on this journey. And so I just picked all these bits and these jokes where I was like, well, this is where things are going, and kind of set it up as to where I know where I want to go with the next album for the second one, because I still have all this material that I worked out on Zoom and some of these live shows. So it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's exciting. It was really exciting to have the album and to be able to talk about your life. I think it's very humbling, and I'm so grateful to have that opportunity.
So do you think if the lockdown didn't happen, do you still think like you still had like this whole album material and the album would have happened last month, or was that like was it in your scope to have an album released by this year where you're already working towards it? It just
No,
kind of
no, not at all. I have no idea. I have no idea if I would have ever done the album. Um, because the person I was with, she was the one who planted that seed. She was the one who was like, you should do an album. She was the one who gave me that idea, and then encouraged me when I didn't believe in myself. So I am very much eternally grateful for her and for our time together, because I don't think it would have ever happened. That album would have never come to fruition had COVID never happened, had I never met, my girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend, like none of it would have ever came to be. So it's kind of crazy if you look back on your life, how certain things had to line up, how certain things had to happen in order for you to get where you are. And it reminds me of a quote that I heard in the beginning of COVID, as I was, kind of going through and dealing with my childhood stuff. And then right before I met my ex, where it was like, if you're happy where you are right now, then you have to be happy with the path that you took in order to get here. It's the only way it's going to work. If you're not happy now, if you're not happy with your path, then you can't be happy now. It just doesn't, everything has to like line up.
yeah.
You have to be appreciative, because again, everything happens for you.
Right. So where did you like? I think the album is just audio, right? Or is there going to be a video to it as well?
We're working on the video. A couple things had come up right after the album had been recorded. And so I kind of just, for lack of a better way of putting it, I kind of just spiraled out. And so the video will be coming. I have it. We're in the process of editing it, but just getting the audio done it was tough, dude. Like it was fucking hard, because it was just hard to get motivated to kind of face it. And not that it was facing it in a bad thing. I was so proud of what I had done, but given what I was going through at the time, I just couldn't I just couldn't get myself up to face it, to do it, to put in the work, to sit here and listen to those jokes. Like, I basically had been in a 3.5 month depression, a week after I recorded the album. Like, I just, things happened. I didn't see any of it coming, and just boom, just hit rock bottom. So, so a little bit behind the 8 ball, but again, everything happens for you.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of the way that I look at it now.
So did you like completely self-produce it, or did you have like somebody help you, or you just kind of went in for it yourself? And
Went in for it for myself. I had, in the fall, I had reached out, like, that was the craziest thing. So like, that's why when everything happened after the album the way that it did, I just spiraled out, because the amount of pressure that I was under was, it was enough to fucking make a diamond. In September and October, like September and August, like I was trying to find like venues. I couldn't find a venue that had everything that I was looking for. And I was like reaching out to some record labels, like independent labels, and like sending emails and making phone calls, and nobody was getting back to me. I was doing stand up full time. I was working a full time job. I was living between two apartments. I was in this relationship. I was helping raise a child. Like, there were so many things on my plate that, like, I just didn't know. I didn't know what to fucking do. And I just couldn't. I was just exhausted. I was so mentally exhausted. And I got to this point at the end of September, beginning of October, more or less, probably by the beginning of October, where I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do this myself. And I just ponied up the money for myself and found a club back home in Poughkeepsie. Laugh It Up. These guys are amazing. And so they I got the venue the night that I wanted. They got everything set up. I hired the sound guy, the video guy, everything worked. I got my comics and sold enough tickets where it literally paid for everything. It was perfect.
that's great.
Yeah. I have this check from the club that night, from that show, and I'm gonna frame it. And so that's gonna be that. Yeah. It's sometimes you just have to bet on yourself, because nobody's going to give you a chance.
So you do all the editing yourself, or is it just the sound guys, video guys that you hired?
So I listened to it, then I would send them my edits, then they would send it back, and I'd listen again, make more edits, send it back. So we went through this process probably like four or five times, and then finally got everything clean cut and ready to go, and it just lined up with the date that I wanted to release it on. I got, my ex was very big on like angel numbers, something like good luck and the universe and positivity and good vibes and all that stuff. And um, so I wanted to be on 222, so February 22nd, and it just worked out. It just fucking worked, and yeah, it was, I don't know, it was just perfect. Yeah.
So since you released it, like do you already, you said you have enough material to do record another album? It's like, do you already have one like in planning, like, okay, in 2 years time I want to have my next album, or you just gonna like take a step back now, see where things go? And
No, I kind of have an idea of the material that I want to do. Um, I can't. I'd like to have the next one out next year. That's the goal. So I'm thinking September 2024. That's going to be the goal. So like I want, or maybe spring of 2024, maybe in a year. Because like once I line all the jokes up and I have the set planned out, um, I'm pretty like I'm pretty good about having the discipline of like, all right, these are the jokes. We're working these jokes out. Let's get these jokes. Let's trim the fat. Let's keep going. Um, because once I went on the road, I started on the road with my first headlining weekend in the beginning of March. I was at the Church of Satire in Hanover, Pennsylvania. Shout out to Jim Bryan. Fuck yeah, first headlining weekend. Love that dude. And then had everything lined up like in the exact order I wanted in 6 months. And it was perfect. And so then it just became a time. And it just came like the time to make sure I knew all the jokes and I had the rhythm and I had the timing because that was it.
So you planning on having the next album at the same comedy club, or are you gonna try to get a different venue?
I'll probably go to a different venue. Um, I'll probably go to a different venue, but hey, you never know. I mean, it was so great working with those guys. So, um, I might go back there. I might, depending on where I'm living. If I'm in Jersey, why not do it at a Jersey club? There's a couple venues that are there that just I've never seen anything being produced there. So I think that would be fucking huge for the club. And I always look at it as take care of the people that take care of you. So if you have a club that like looks out for you, that gives you spots, gives you opportunities, believes in you, then why not do something there? Like if I was born and bred in New York City, I would have recorded my album at the comic strip because if it wasn't for Richie, who God rest his soul was the owner, um, I don't know if I would be still doing stand up. But he gave me that opportunity to do late night in 2016 and I'll never forget it.
All right, we got a couple minutes left. Is there anything like you wanna get out about the album, or any like comedy tips or something you learned you wanna share with people?
Yeah. So listen, please just go right to my Instagram, Ralph the Mouth 81. I got my link tree right there. Buy the album, listen to it on Apple Music. It's $10. You're gonna laugh. It's got something for everybody. It's got goofy drug jokes, it's got self-deprecation, it's got drinking jokes, it talks about being a dad, it talks about being in my 40s and all the stuff that goes on with that. It talks about being in relationships. So there's something for everyone all across the spectrum. So if you like stand up and you like to laugh, buy the fucking album. It's $10. It like just help me out. Help me pay rent. Um so that's one thing. And then I guess I don't know for tips just for stand up. It sounds so funny to say this, but just have fun. Just have fun. It's stand up. If you're not having fun on stage, the audience isn't going to have fun watching you. So get up there. Don't be afraid to make an ass of yourself. Test the limits. Push yourself right every day and just have fun. And this is not like it's not brain surgery. It's not supposed to be hard. It's jokes. I think the easiest thing about stand up is writing the jokes. Everything else will fall into place the way it's supposed to. Don't fall into the trap of seeing what people are doing on social media. Don't fall into the trap of seeing what other comics are working, what clubs and how busy their schedule is. Don't pay attention to when comics post their flyers with all their show dates because that's what I did. And I was already a working comedian and getting paid. And I would look at people's schedules and be like, what the fuck? Like, why can't I do that? But you got to have an attitude of gratitude, because there was a time where I only had one or two shows a month. And then I had a point where I was doing 12 shows a month. And then I was doing 20 something shows a month. So it's like the universe and God will never reward you if you're not grateful for what you already have. So just be grateful that you have something right now. Be happy, be in the moment, be present, and just live your life and realize that there is more to stand up than just being on stage and telling the jokes.
Yep. Just like you said, like have this attitude, like help the people that are helping you, like even if it's just like going to a club and offering like, I don't know, work there or help with something outside of stage time. Just offer
Yeah.
help, and then eventually it will come back to you and like, hey, do you want this spot?
Yeah. That's really it. Help out your other comics. I find that comics get so protective of booker info and like who to reach out to about certain shows, like bookers at clubs or producers of shows. Like, it's stand up. There's so much work for all of us. Just learn to share. Don't hoard it all. Just honestly, it's gonna sound really funny. Just be fucking cool. Okay? Just be fucking cool. Don't be a dick.
Yep. All right. So and then for everyone that's not following you yet, I will make sure to link all your socials, websites, the album. Gonna link it all in the show notes in the post. And so yeah, unless there's anything else you want to say.
No, I just want to thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this platform to come on and talk about the album. You were one of the nicest comics that I've met because of Zoom. We would have never crossed paths had it not been for the pandemic. So thank you for this opportunity. I am eternally grateful, and hopefully we can work together down the road.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for being here today. Our time is about to run out, so I will get the video up, everything linked, and a post out, and everybody can listen to your album soon. So thanks again for joining us, and thank you everybody for listening. Bye.
Bye now. Thank you.